what's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation expert, money mindset and fulfillment coach, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur. Come sit with me while I spill the real tea on what it's like to practice using intentional manifestation, demystify all of the woo-woo and confusing bullshit that comes along with creating the life of your dreams, and give you a realistic view of what it's like to be on a personal, spiritual, and professional growth journey. The goal of this podcast is to support and guide you towards manifesting all of your dreams, shed light on the things that people are too scared to talk about, and encourage you to become the person who gets to have it all, be it all, and do it all. I am so happy you are here. Let's fucking do this thing. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. Ooh, this episode is so damn good, and this is for all of my women out there who experience problems, experience pain, experience all of the shitty things that come along with having your period. And just a little background for today's episode and what really inspired it for me is hormone health is something that I have been challenged by my entire life. Back in high school, my senior year of high school, I 1 week went from having completely clear, beautiful skin to the next week having an entire face full of cystic acne. And knowing nothing about it, knowing absolutely nothing about why it showed up, what I could do about it. I struggled with it for so long, and the solution that I was always given was going on birth control or going on Accutane or doing all of these different things that really didn't feel in alignment to me and more so felt like a bandaid, felt like something to cover up the underlying issues of why that started in the first place and how to naturally start to work with my body to clear up this acne, in addition to the other painful and really fucking frustrating period symptoms that I was getting. So anyone who has been challenged by their hormonal health in the past, I want you to know that I see you. This is something that still, when I am not on top of my game, not on top of my nutrition, my hydration, my sleep, my stress levels, and managing my stress, I still experience some painful periods, acne, all of those different things. But it is completely possible to create a loving connection with your period, as well as an understanding of how to manifest clear skin, manifest your period pains away, to be able to get rid of all of those really annoying and frustrating PMS symptoms that we're just told are normal and that we have to go through on a monthly basis, because they don't have to be normal. They don't have to be something that you experience. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today on the No Bullshit Manifestation Show with the incredible Grace Rash. So Grace is a online friend, a friend that I had the pleasure of connecting with back early this year of January 2021 in a online group coaching program that we were both a part of, and we just immediately hit it off. We both loved each other's vibes and have been able to connect and be a part of each other's circles ever since. And I love the work that Grace does. Grace is a hormone health coach with a background in integrative health, and she helps holistic-minded women understand their bodies and cycles so that they can solve their period problems naturally. Just like I was saying, not having to put this Band-Aid over it in order to get rid of those period symptoms and get rid of the period pain, and really understanding how to get to the root of your period problems so that you can live a more optimal and healthy life, because that is so crucial for the manifestation process. Oftentimes we're taught with the manifestation process that the only thing that matters is your mindset and your subconscious conditioning. And that is not true whatsoever. The mind-body connection and the way that they communicate with each other is so key to you attracting and manifesting the things that you desire into your life with so much more ease. And Grace is on the show today to give you so much information on how you can start to get your hormone health into alignment and into balance so that you can start to naturally attract and manifest more of the things that you desire into your life, and honestly just feel your best more often. So without further ado, here is Miss Grace, and I hope y'all enjoy this episode. Yay. Awesome. Welcome on to the show, Grace. I'm super excited to have you today. Just a little context for our listeners. Grace and I met earlier this year. I think it was like January of this year, 2021. We met in another coaching container where we were learning about dopamine and its effect on the body. And both of us just totally vibed after that. And I am obsessed with her, obsessed with the work that she does and how she helps other women. So I wanted to bring her onto the show to help all of you today and to just really dive into some of the work that Grace brings to the table. So once again, Grace, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dive in, and it's an honor to be on the podcast. So cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. So to kick this thing off, let's start with your story. Like, what has led you to be where you are and who you are in your life today and doing the work that you do to support other women?
Yeah. So I feel like this is true for a lot of coaches. I know it's true for your story, but the reason I do what I'm doing is because I went through it myself, and I'm here to extend what I've learned to other women who are struggling. So when it comes to the area of hormone health, several years ago, my hormones were a wreck. I mean, I don't think that I ever had a regular period from the get-go. I would have a normal cycle and then it would disappear for months. And then when it came back, I was dealing with all kinds of crazy symptoms like acne and mood swings and painful cramps and fatigue, all of these different symptoms that are, generally associated with a hormone imbalance. And I found that as I was searching for answers, going to like my OBGYN gynecologist, I was just met with like, here's some birth control, or here's a simple solution. And I, even from a younger age, knew that there was more than just a Band-Aid fix. Like no one was telling me why it was happening. And my brain works that way. I'm like, I need to know the why. I need to know the root of the problem. Like, I don't want to just fix the symptoms. Like, why am I broken in the first place, so to speak? So after searching and turning down, like, I didn't want to go on birth control. I wasn't even like sexually active. I was like, what is the point of doing this if it's just like covering up the acne and the irregular periods? And so I really I took a deep dive into researching, understanding the body, because once I started asking questions, I realized like, I don't really know anything about my cycle other than the fact that I have a period. Then there's this thing called ovulation that is irrelevant right now because I'm not trying to get pregnant. Like, there was just so little information. And even like the people around me, like my friends and my family, like asking them questions, I realized that no one's really filled in as much as we could be on the female body and cycle. So doing a lot of research and just understanding how it worked in the first place, and then going into a solution that would actually get to the root cause of why I was experiencing imbalance in the first place. And that led to so much healing in and of itself, just taking the initiative to do the research and to understand. And it became a passion. Like, I was talking to everyone about it. Like, did you know that this happens? And there's this thing that does this. And it actually sparked my interest in just the world of holistic medicine in general and integrative health, and kind of provided a path for me to find the nutrition school that I went to. So I went to school for integrative nutrition. I got my coaching certification. And what really sparked all of that was my interest in hormone health. And so when I graduated from that, I was just doing general coaching, like wellness coaching for women, very straightforward, just kind of surface level, and very quickly found that most of the women that were coming to me with whatever issues they were facing in their health had some kind of root in their hormone balance. And that was great news for me because I had already done so much research and gone through all of this myself. So I very quickly realized that I needed to niche into hormone health specifically and start working with women in that way. And that led to different case studies of how all the information through what I did on my own research and through my just certification in integrative nutrition, how it all came together. And there was foundational information that I think every woman needed to know. But once I started working with people one-on-one, I realized everyone's body is so different. And there's kind of a unique approach that you can take to everyone's situation. So after a couple of years of doing that and really developing my program, and actually, funny enough, one of the programs that really led me to go full-time in this and be, helping women full-time with their hormones, that coach led me to the dopamine detox course that we did, which led me to you. So it's like this kind of domino effect of all these different connections that I've made along the way. And that leads me to where I am now. I've been working with women one-on-one. I started out working with women in person, and then conveniently, like months before like the pandemic hit and everything, I had transitioned to online. And so I've just been thriving in the online environment now and able to help even more women. So that kind of leads me to where I am today, just that story of having dealt with it myself and then being able to learn even more as I work with women in their individual situations with their hormones.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's so incredible to see how everything is connected in some sort of way, and that like the thing that happens inside of us for you, like this experience of like the hormone imbalance, and like having that kind of balance or like battle that you experienced with your hormones and challenge that you experienced with your hormones led you to where you are today, helping so many other women with what they're experiencing. And I love what you said about like what we're typically taught is to put a bandaid over it. And that's the solution to it with birth control or like different medications or X, Y, and Z that like, yes, clears up the issue quickly, but doesn't actually get to what the core of the issue is. So in your experience of coaching women so far and like your own life, what are some of those core issues that we have been taught to put Band-Aids over?
Yeah. So I like to kind of call them the pillars of hormone health. It's kind of surprising to a lot of people how the fundamental aspects of our health are also the fundamental aspects of our hormone health. It's all about bringing the body back into balance. And so oftentimes when I work with women on their hormones, they'll always say like, wow, it's so much simpler than I thought. Yet I had no idea where to start, this whole process of bringing everything back into balance. So I would say that one of the biggest hormone disruptors is definitely stress. We live in a very fast-paced, go, 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 very goal-oriented society. And especially as women who are inherently a lot, slower paced, more community-driven, more process-focused rather than goal-oriented, we've kind of fallen out of what our nature has always been and kind of turned more towards that very fast-paced kind of masculine way of living our life. And even I'm sure you and I both as business owners, like we see that firsthand as well, like the hustle, the grind, like that's what it's all about. And so first and foremost, the stress levels of, number one, slowing down is one of the biggest things that you can do just to combat stress. Like take time to rest, take time to slow down, see what areas of your life you can be more intentional with and more mindful with. And then on top of the kind of mindset shift that comes with that, also integrating some things into your life in, your habits that allow for stress management. So maybe you're setting up a morning and an evening routine where you're taking time for you, you're taking time to do things that really calm the body, calm the mind, and really just being intentional with your time and the way that you take care of yourself. It adds a different level to self-care. I think everyone talks about self-care. It's a very like buzzword now. But on a deeper level, self-care isn't not just like bubble baths and lighting candles and writing in your journal. Like we truly need to carve out time in our day to get real with how we're feeling and making sure that we're not feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and making that intentional time. Like I said, that works wonders. I've worked with women who that simple act of just changing their mindset and realizing that rest can also be productive, because I think we're taught that productivity means like get as much done as you can in the time that you're allotted. And, there are other countries that literally teach their, employees to take rest days so much more often than we do, because they know that they will come back refreshed and they will come back working harder and smarter. And we just haven't quite gotten that concept, I think, here in America or on this side of the world. But just that aspect of resting and slowing down is really, really important for your hormones on many different levels. And it kind of comes back to this weird primal thing that happens where we still have this blueprint embedded in us that's almost like a kind of primal nature that we have, where when things are very fast paced and we're not slowing down, our body does not know the difference between that and being chased by a bear. And so what happens is our system is like, okay, reproductive system is not important right now. Like we got to get a handle on whatever's stressing this lady out. Like her hormones and her reproductive system is shut down. Gut health is not put, as a priority. Our immune system, all these different systems in our bodies are affected by stress. And it's because of that very kind of primal response that happens where we prioritize getting over the stress rather than the other systems that allow us to thrive. And when we're in a constant state of being on edge and being on the grind and all those different things, it kind of locks us into this endless cycle that we have to kind of snap ourselves out of. So stress is definitely that big pillar. And I would say that one of the biggest kind of mindset shifts, like the intangible thing that needs to happen, as far as tangibility goes, truly the fundamentals: nutrition, exercise, sleep regulation, hydration, all these different things that when combined and when prioritized have tremendous effects on your hormone health and really allow your system to come back into balance. And some of it is very surface level, hydration, get half your body weight in ounces, get those 8 cups of water in, whatever it is for you. With nutrition and exercise, those are things that, number one, finding balance with them. I think that on kind of a high level, just not getting super obsessed with a certain way of eating or a certain way of exercising, because that can actually cause a little bit of a stress response sometimes when you're so obsessed with trying to fit into a box. So we need to find some balance and some grace with the nutrition and exercise components, finding a balance that works really well for your body and also in a way that honors your hormones. This is a whole another topic that we can get into, but eating and exercising in accordance with the way that your cycle is kind of ebbing and flowing, the way your hormones are ebbing and flowing, is really, really important to support your body as it moves through that monthly cycle. But yeah, I would say those pillars again: stress, nutrition, movement, sleep management, making sure you're getting your full 8 hours around the same time, every morning and every night, and then hydration as well. Those are 5 places to kind of start. I always recommend like giving yourself a little audit. Like when I say those 5 things, what areas come to your mind where you're like, ooh, that needs some work? And start there. Like just start slowly, start with what needs the most tending to, and, kind of move forward in those small tangible steps, because we want this to be a lifelong thing. We don't want it to be a quick fix like we talked about, like that Band-Aid solution. We want to really heal the body from the inside out. Yeah, I'll stop there with like I said, I could like pull so much more out, but it really, starting with those few things, I think is a good place when you're in that whole place of like, I don't even know where to start. I don't really even know what it means to bring my hormones back into balance. So those are a few little tips that you can kind of take.
I love it. Oh my gosh, so much good stuff there, because I think that is
especially with what you're talking about. And I know for the listeners of this podcast, a lot of them are high achieving women, business owners, um, working towards creating the lives that they want to live, manifesting the realities that they want to live. And it could be really overwhelming and really stressful to try and figure out, okay, well, I want this. I want my finances to look like this. I want my relationships to look like this, and all of these other things. And in addition to that, then the hormonal side, I know that I've struggled with acne for large portions of my life up until coming to this place of really dialing in on my hormonal health and figuring that out for myself. And I still have moments of stress where completely flares up. I just moved to New York City and I just had such an intense acne breakout because I wasn't regulating my stress during that time because there's so many different moving pieces. So everything you just gave us on like, here are the pillars and here are some different ways that you can start to identify what it is. And it doesn't have to be everything at once, I think is so powerful for everyone listening, because it's not tangible to take all of that on at once and try to make all of it happen at once. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that a lot of hormonal health almost has to do with like the feminine energy, like reintroducing some of that feminine energy into your life and allowing some flexibility and flow in what those rituals and different structures that you have for yourself looks like, so that it's not so, okay, this, then this, like checking the list off, creating more of that stress of like, okay, I didn't check the thing off. Like I didn't fill the box, and creating even more of that like masculine stress. So how do you recognize like the feminine energy playing in your life and the way that you go about regulating your hormones and the health that you have in your life?
Yeah, that's a really great question, especially because before I even was in this environment of, like you said, like building a business, having goals, like having that very like hustle, goal oriented mindset. I've always been a very kind of left brained person, and just even thinking far back into my childhood, like very give me the facts, give me logic, like type A, things need to be structured and organized. So it wasn't ever a supernatural thing for me to have that. And I'm sure that there's like a nature nurture thing that comes with that. Like, why was I that way? Why are we that way? But kind of leaning into that feminine side, like you mentioned, worked so many wonders in bringing balance to that. And what I talk to my clients about is finding that balance where it doesn't have to be like you're super right-brained feminine or you're super left-brained masculine. You can have both, whether you're a man or a woman, and find a really good balance. And what that balance looks like is bringing out, one side of the spectrum when it's appropriate and bringing out the other when it's appropriate. But as long as they both exist and you're finding balance in them, that's the most important piece. And so I still use that very logic, factual, structured, goal-oriented kind of way of thinking and mindset in things like my business or when I'm going through a lunch or whatever it is, where I need those tools and I need kind of that specialized way of thinking. Whereas the feminine is when I cut, the work off and I'm done with my day. And how do I transition? Do I stay in that like on edge, fast paced, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow? Or do I allow myself to decompress and rest and slow down and get my herbal tea and my dark chocolate and snuggle up on the couch? Like all of these literally starkly different than what my workday looks like, being able to really tap into that a little bit and allow my body to just have like a full bodied exhale, like, okay, like we're done, we did what we need to do. And now we can really lean into this idea of rest and restoration. And even those little things, like I mentioned earlier, of, leaning into your feminine sometimes looks like engaging with loved ones and friends and people in your community, like very community socialized, like oriented. We're very nurturing as well. Like where can you pull those aspects in and honor that aspect of yourself as well? And I think this is a big theme that's been coming up, especially in like the like self-development kind of coaching, business oriented world, is this idea of finding that like masculine feminine balance. And it's very true for your hormones too. I mentioned earlier, I've worked with clients who literally just the simple act of switching gears a little bit and allowing, you know, space for both things. I mean, I've had women straight up tell me like, no, that sounds terrible. That sounds horribly unproductive. I worked with one woman I'm thinking of specifically who was like the head of like a hospital branch management. Like she was like in her 50s going through some menopausal stuff, and we worked with her hormones in that aspect. But her entire life she had been functioning, and you know, her success was based on the way that she was able to kind of tap into that masculine side and manage people and manage the branch and do all of these things. And so it sounded like it repulsed her for me to talk about like ways she could lean into her feminine. She's like, that sounds stupid. Like that sounds like incredibly unproductive and incredibly miserable. Like I don't want to be that way. And so we had to dig in on why she felt that way and kind of why it's been that way her entire life. And once she really allowed herself to see that as being productive, like seeing how much the rest was productive. And a lot of that started with like, hey, why are you here? Like you're here because you're dealing with these symptoms. And this is something I wanted to point out earlier too, when you were mentioning like the acne flare up with moving and things like that, is we need to realize that our symptoms are actually a really cool thing because they're our body's alarm system. Like it's our body's way of telling us that something's wrong. And so with this person, I was really upfront with like, hey, you're here because you're experiencing these symptoms. So clearly what you're doing is not working. And what would allow you to show up in your job even better and to lead these people in this branch even better is for you to feel your best. And you don't feel your best right now. So let's get you to that place. And oftentimes if you, especially have gone that long feeling a certain way, in order to feel differently, you have to do things that you haven't tried before. And for her, that was switching gears and slowing down and really tapping into that feminine. And when she did, she was a different person. I mean, her hot flashes and all these symptoms just started disappearing. We worked on, you know, nutrition and things like that too. But what it really started with was her finally letting her body just chill out. Like I remember her homework sometimes would be like, go home and watch an episode of Netflix. Like don't do anything else. Like you have to sit on the couch and do nothing. That is your homework. And that's what happens with a lot of women that are that way. And something with the symptoms piece too, because I think it's important to note, is like you said, you can come to terms and like get a grip on certain symptoms. Like let's talk about acne, for example. You can really have different support systems there to heal your hormones and heal your acne and have everything be nice and balanced. But that means that when something comes your way that knocks it out of balance a little bit, you can expect your body to throw off, you know, that alarm system again and throw up the flag and say like, hey, help, something's off. And you were able to see like, oh man, this move has been stressing me out. I haven't taken the time to de-stress. Like I really need to make sure that I'm doing that for myself right now. And I'm sure, you know, saw your skin react positively to that change. So I think that's important for a lot of people to note, is that if they're dealing with symptoms right now, number one, your symptoms are there telling you that something's off and that we need to kind of dive in and see what it is that we could optimize in your life, what support systems we could integrate. And it's also important to realize in the future that, especially like, again, with the concept of acne, like if you're an acne prone person, that means that acne is one of your body's go-to ways to be like, hey, something's off. Like some people, they might not have, you know, acne breakouts under stress or with nutrition changes and things like that. I am not that person. It sounds like you're also someone who acne is one of your body's ways to quickly get your attention and tell you that something's off. And so I tell that to people all the time, whether it's the acne or the fatigue or the mood swings, if they start to show themselves again, it's actually a really beautiful way to tap in and see that your body's trying to alert you of something, rather than like, imagine if that wasn't the case. Like imagine if things were wrong and imbalanced and our body wasn't in an optimal state and we just continued going downhill because nothing was catching our attention. Nothing was making us, you know, pay attention to the fact that something could be off. And that's why it's so important to get to the root cause rather than look into those quick fixes, those bandaid fixes, like certain medications and birth control specifically for symptoms and things like that, because A really good analogy that a good friend of mine that's really into hormone health as well gave is that birth control and medications that are used for hormonal symptoms are like taking the batteries out of the fire alarm. You know, your body won't tell you that something's wrong anymore. Sometimes it does eliminate the symptoms, but the fire's still there. And it's actually more dangerous when the fire's still going and nothing's telling you that it's going, because you can't actually tend to that. And that's what happens with a lot of women when they go on some kind of medication or go on birth control for symptoms. When they come off, their symptoms just come right back. And they're like, oh, I thought that it was supposed to fix these things. And it wasn't. It was just kind of covering them up temporarily. So with both of I wanted to note on both the symptoms and the feminine side of things. But yes, to answer your question, it is very important to really lean into that. And it's made a world of difference, not just in my health, but I would even say in the way that I operate in my business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything that you just said. And something that really stood out to me in what you just said is this piece of how, at least in my experience, what I've noticed with most of my friends, most of like the women that I interact with, is that like, we just take it as normal that like our periods are this bad, that the cramps are this bad, that we have that intensive mood swings, the fatigue, the acne, like all of the different symptoms that come up, and that doesn't have to be normal. Nor should it be normal, but we've kind of just like accepted it as this normal thing, and do then continue on with the things, the band-aids, the whatever it is, to take the batteries out of the fire alarm so that we can continue to move forward, because we do live in such a like fast-paced, high stress, masculine environment where things always have to continue to get done, as opposed to taking that time to really relax and reset. So for any of the women that are listening that are like, oh shit, I've been taking the batteries out of the smoke alarm, and maybe it's not normal that I'm experiencing all of these really intense symptoms around my period, or like with my hormones in general. Like, what's the advice that you would give to those women who are like, yeah, this is me?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would say, even because things are labeled as normal a lot of the time, a lot of symptoms are labeled as just part of being a woman and part of having a cycle, even from a young age. Like, as soon as we start our period, it's like, okay, you're going to crave chocolate and you're going to have cramps and you're going to be super moody. We're like already preconditioned to think that it's going to happen. So like,
we're manifesting that shit.
Not acting like we're not even meaning to, but we are. And so it is really important to first realize that it's not normal and it is possible to feel so much better. And so my advice to start with would be to really lean into that, to lean into the fact that things can be different. Just because something's common does not mean that it's normal. That's something that I preach all the time when it comes to our hormone health, because there's a lot of different symptoms and a lot of different situations that are extremely common because of all of the hormone disruptors that exist in our world. But it does not mean that because they're so common that they're normal, just because so many women deal with it. I know like the statistic is 80 to 90% of women deal with some aspect of PMS. That's why it's just a word that we all use. It's something that we all resonate with. That's a huge number, 80 to 90%. But I can tell you firsthand that I've worked with women who have seen their PMS go away completely and had no idea that that was even possible. But what allowed for that to happen was realizing that it is possible, and, you know, taking no other answer than that there is something that you can do to change. You know, that's something that you talk about a lot, is just like, this has to happen. Like, not just, I'm going to find a way for it to happen. Like, no, this has to work. Like, I have to find an answer. Things have to change. Like, I know that it can be different. And so really leaning into that reality and really painting that picture, I would say, for yourself. I know that even with your teaching, like the idea of really feeling what it looks like to be on the other side is that first step, not just realizing that it's possible. But when I get on discovery calls with potential clients, I always spend a large amount of time really pulling that vision out of them. Like, what do you see? Like, what's going to be different when you get on the, like, what's on the other side of this? Like, if these symptoms are gone, if you really feel that connection to your body, you understand it, you understand your symptoms, you understand your cycle as a whole, you have that relationship to your body, and these things aren't getting in the way anymore. Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What can you go do now? Like, what's the first thing you would do when you don't have a migraine, half of the month? Like, what would be possible? And once you can really see that and get clear on that and see it as possible, I think that's the first step. And even with what you talk about with manifestation, I mean, on a very, very high, like, surface level, it's taking something theoretical and making it real. And you have to first have the theoretical. You have to first have the, oh, okay, I can make this possible. Like, that first step is leaning into what you want that to look like. And it doesn't just mean like, oh, I would have no more cramps and no more acne and I would feel confident. It's like, okay, yes, that is great, but like, keep going. Like what would really change? And once you can get a grip on that, I think that, women you can just take off from there, because you make it a priority by putting so much energy and thought into it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This is a huge piece of the manifestation process, because what I hear and what you're saying is, just because something's common doesn't mean that it's normal. And a lot of that conditioning then means for women that we don't even think about what it would mean if we don't have however long it is for the unique individual that they have their symptoms, and like how much energy that takes out of their each month and what they're doing. And to really come into this vision of like, okay, yeah, if the symptoms were gone, the cramps were gone, the mood swings were gone, the acne was gone, that oftentimes would allow someone to show up as this confident version that they're wanting to be, whether they be a business owner or doing whatever it is, pursuing whatever it is that they desire. It's hard for us to show up as the highest version of ourselves when we don't feel there physically. Mm-hmm. And I know you and I were talking about this before we started recording the show. It's like the mind-body connection and having your body be in that optimal condition is so important for the manifestation process, because when we feel like absolute shit, that's not going to do anything for our mindset. And then that's not going to do anything for our energy and our vibration and our set point of attraction and what we're attracting and manifesting into our lives. It's just going to continue this like self-fulfilling prophecy of like, yup, I feel like shit. I get shit results. I have a shitty period. Like, this is no fun. And to be able to like really get to the place where, okay, yes, it's possible to feel so much more aligned, so much more free, so much more safe inside of my body, then doesn't only change those symptoms like you're talking about, the basic symptoms that we typically see with like getting our periods or having PMS, but also changing the mental aspect of what's possible for you moving forward and how you can show up in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and a good, something that's kind of a wake-up call for a lot of women when they kind of, like we've talked about, push back, like, yeah, I deal with these symptoms and I don't feel my best for X amount of, my cycle, but then once I'm over it, like, I feel good. Once the PMS is over, I feel good. Once my period's over, I feel good. Something that I always offer is like, okay, let's say if it's just your period or if it's just your PMS week, that's just 1 week out of the month, right? Like 1 week out of the month, you can handle that. When you blow it up to a yearly scale, that's a quarter of your year that you feel like absolute crap and you don't show up to, the fullest degree that you can. That's a quarter of your entire year. Like, what could you do with that quarter of your year? Like, if you had it back, if you felt your best and you could really act accordingly. And then for a lot of people, it's longer than that. It's maybe the week of PMS or the week of your period or both of those 2 weeks together. And then some people experience symptoms around ovulation as well. And like that week kind of towards the midpoint of your cycle. And I'll talk to women all the time where they're like, yeah, it sucks because like I get these symptoms, then I'll have like a good week. I feel good. And then like halfway through my cycle, they come back and then I feel good after that. And then I know that my period's coming in a week and it starts all over. So Once we start getting into the 2-week territory, that's a half of, your entire year, where every 2 weeks out of the 4-week month, you're not feeling your best. So once you put that to scale and you realize how much time you're losing feeling not your best, and you know how much more you can achieve and how much better you can show up when you are in an optimized state of being, especially when it comes to your hormone health and the way that you're feeling when things are imbalanced, it really kind of shifts gears and makes it a priority once you see how much time it's really taking. So yeah, that's huge, is realizing how it's actually impacting your life. And I would say the first step again is to get really real with yourself and think about what could be possible if you had that full year feeling your best. Because something we talk about is, even with what is a natural response to hormonal shifts in the body, like your period, for example, what is the onset of menstruation is that your hormone levels are going from an all-time high during ovulation to an all-time low during menstruation. Like they're hitting rock bottom, those hormone levels are plummeting, and your energy levels typically do with that. You feel a little bit more fatigued and things like that. But even when you eliminate all of the other symptoms, you'll have that natural kind of up and down in energy levels and in motivation and things like that. And instead of looking at that as a hindrance, we can actually learn how to work alongside our body, how to prepare for that, especially in business and things like that, how to actually work alongside our cycle. And so once you come into perspective of, okay, if I had a full year of really working alongside my body and having that really cool, like, guys, hormones are like the biggest biohack you can have as a woman. Like we talk about biohacking all the time, and like how we can really, pair the body and productivity and things like that. And hormones are such an easy way to get to that place. And so imagine what would be possible if you had, every single day of the month, every single day of the year, you're working alongside your body to show up in the best way that you can. Like a lot can get done, I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation of like hustle, 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 and like this need to always be productive. Imagining like if you did feel your best almost 100% of the time, it could take so much of that hustle away, and that need to constantly feel like you have to be productive in order to move the needle forward in your life, in your business, in whatever it is that you're wanting to do, and would allow so much more of that time to yourself and the things that you're wanting to do to get into your body, get into what brings you pleasure and joy, and really delve into those things. If we were to understand that like it doesn't have to be this way, and that you can, just like you're saying, work with your body, work with its rhythms, work with your hormones to truly be in this place where you can have that balance. And it doesn't have to feel like this uphill battle to get to like just accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish all the time and then feeling like a failure when you're not.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me of like the very kind of typical like new agey coachy term of like the flow state, getting into that flow state. It, number one, is great because like flow, your hormones, your cycle, it goes together, but that's truly where you land when you form that connection, that understanding of your body and your cycle, is you're in a constant flow state with work, with life, with productivity, whatever it is, because you are utilizing kind of that natural state of what your body's kind of telling you and doing based on where you're at in your cycle. And we can talk about that a little bit on a very high level. It's from menstruation to ovulation. So that would be around the midpoint of your cycle. From the time you start your period to the midpoint of your cycle, those two phases, you have menstruation, and the phase after that's follicular phase, which not many people talk about or know, but the names aren't important. It's more so like that first half, you could say, of your cycle. That's when your energy levels are a little bit lower, but they're steadily climbing as you move towards ovulation. So it's a really good time to, number one, kind of rest, take care of yourself, especially during the week of your period. And it's actually a really good time to kind of like audit your business. A really cool fun fact is that the right and left brain hemispheres have been studied to be in higher communication during the week of your period. And that is oftentimes why we get so emotional, because there's like no borders or boundaries at all between like the different sides of our brain. It's just like everything is communicating and everything just feels so much more strongly. So when it comes to getting really real with like, hey, I need to be doing this better, or I need to take less time doing this, or maybe this system isn't as optimized as it could be, it's actually a really good time to do that. And it's also a very like low energy activity to do. Like just sit down on your laptop or with a notebook and kind of go through different areas and see what you can optimize and what you can kind of audit a little bit. And then the week after that, as you start to regain some energy, it's a really great time for planning. So planning content, planning posts, planning, scheduling calls and meetings, like that whole planning mode is really, really great for as those energy levels start to rise again. Then everything peaks at the midpoint of your cycle, your energy, your confidence, your kind of like social energy as well. Like we're a lot typically more social during ovulation, that midpoint of our cycle. So this is a really good time to show up. Like that's where the planning the meetings, this is when the meetings happen. This is when the Zoom calls, all of the showing up happens, is really, really beneficial during that time of ovulation, because you probably will already want to, like, you want to be seen and, be like having that very social energy. A lot of the time we're a lot more articulate with our thoughts and things like that as well. And then as we transition back into menstruation a couple of weeks after our ovulation week, that's where things start to slow down again, start to turn inward again. So we kind of shift our energy accordingly, where that week after we may still feel some lingering like high energy and want to get things done. And then we'll transition back into that like slower planning and processing and back end kind of stuff. And obviously some of these things you have to do every single week. Like there will be some showing up and some back end, but really like bulking it out that way. And this doesn't even apply for work. I've had plenty of women who, with social events or like going out and doing things, they'll be like, okay, let me look at my like cycle app and see where I'm going to be this week. That's when I'm going to plan it. Even for me, like with, being a guest on podcasts or something like that, like I would rather show up around that midpoint than like the week of my period, because I'm going to be a little low energy. I might not be able to like articulate my thoughts as clearly. So it's really cool what you can do when you understand the way that your body and your cycle works, and you understand that mind-body connection, like we talked about earlier, where it's not just a physical change that's happening. There's a way that you position yourself every week because of kind of the things that are happening cognitively as well as a result of that hormonal shift, where you can actually tap into that and do what makes the most sense. And then you're working with your body instead of fighting against it, where you're like, oh my gosh, I do not feel like doing X, Y, and Z today. Don't have the energy to do it. There were dog sounds. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, they're perfect.
I have no BS, right? I have a 4-week-old puppy that's literally laying under my chair right now, and he is the most dramatic little creature that I've seen. Like if he's napping or resting and you like barely poke him, like what happened is he just moved his head and it hit the bottom of my chair. He's like, like everything is terrible, and he just groans. So hopefully
I love it.
Picked up, because he literally was just like, Mom, you're sitting on top of me, please, even though he's the one who put himself down there. But
so cute.
Anyways, yeah, so working with your body rather than fighting against it and trying to push yourself to do things that you're just not in the optimized state of doing it actually brings a lot of like kind of relieves some burden for a lot of people too, because if we're not aware of this, we'll have days or weeks where we're like, oh my gosh, like why do I just want to take a nap? Like I hate myself. Like why can't I do anything? And you're just like frustrated with yourself because you don't feel like the way that, you think that you should feel based on what you have to get done. Whereas just having the simple awareness of like, oh gosh, I'm a week out from my period. My hormone levels are dropping, my energy levels are dropping. Like I got to show myself some grace. Like what can I do? How can I kind of rearrange my day to where maybe I can get the most done in the morning and that way I'll have the afternoon to relax. Like just tapping into what's going on can actually be really healing in and of itself, because it takes away the frustration of like, why do I feel like a crazy person? Or like, why am I so unproductive today? It gives you a why. And like knowing the why behind everything, whether it's what's happening to you or why you're doing what you're doing to take care of yourself, that's one of the most powerful things, because it gives you clarity around every single thing that's happening. And that's what really forms that solid connection to your body and understanding of not just what's going on, but how to move forward in taking care of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. That's something that I see so regularly with the women that I work with is these weeks that they do have lower energy and are moving through different phases of their cycle. And they don't feel the level of motivation that they want to feel, or they're feeling some sort of way within themselves. It then feeds into past like stories about self and like the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, and into like this cycle of guilt and shame, as opposed to just recognizing like, it's just natural. It's just what our bodies are doing. And to bring that level of awareness to your specific cycle and where you're at can bring so much peace to your mindset and to the way that you're then attracting and manifesting things into your life, which is just so powerful. I always say to the women that I work with, it's like the manifestation process is not just about our mindsets and getting our minds into the right place. It truly is this mind-body connection, because the body plays such a massive, massive role in all of this. And everything that you've shared with us is just like so powerful to be able to create that healthy mind-body connection that will help so many of the women that are listening attract and manifest the things that they're wanting with so much more ease and without so much confusion around why they feel the way they feel or what's happening inside of them. So thank you for all of that. And I guess my last question for you is like, if you had like one piece of advice or like one big ass wisdom drop that you wanted to give to anyone who's struggling with that mind-body connection right now, what would it be?
Yeah, struggling with the mind-body connection specifically. I would honestly, one of the things that I find myself saying all of the time, whether it's my clients or my audience or whatever, is truly just to just first show yourself some grace. Like, don't make it as hard on yourself as it, has. Like, it doesn't have to be that difficult. Like, especially when it comes to having that connection to your body. Like, you are your body at the end of the day. There's this weird kind of like disconnect that comes when we start to kind of overthink things. And like you said, like the limiting the beliefs, the past experiences, like so many things can get in the way that we forget, that at the end of the day, like we can just get really still with ourselves and like find some grace and, space for ourselves to just drop in and be like, okay, like this is literally me. Like that's something weird that happens for a lot of clients, is they're like, it's so weird that these symptoms are happening to me and I don't know how to manage them, because like it's my body, but I don't really feel like connected to it anymore because it's going through X, Y, and Z. So again, this applies to everything. I wish that I could have some more time with like the specific mind-body connection, but I definitely want to say, especially after this entire conversation, because we had like a lot that we unpacked and there was a lot of information there, and hopefully you can take that information and start to kind of like fill any gaps that you might have right now, rather than feel like it was just, a train hit you and you feel overwhelmed with all the things that you've been hearing. So it's a lot of like, one of the bigger hormone disruptors is like an overabundance of information, in my opinion, because you don't know where to start when you're just like, oh my gosh, there's either not enough information or there's too much. So starting off with just showing yourself some grace in all areas of your life. I know I talked about those pillars of like nutrition and exercise and stress management and sleep regulation and hydration and all those good things. Even with making those things a priority, you have to cut yourself some slack and show yourself some grace always, and realize that at the end of the day, like you're a human and you're going through this whole thing like everyone else is. And what a blessing it is for you to be, number one, listening to this podcast right now and filling your head with all this information, because not everyone understands what we're talking about. And it is so, so important to really take it in and to understand it. But yeah, like just trust. I know trust the process is like so cliche, but like really like
it is.
Trust what's
happening. It is, but it's true.
Right, it is. It's so true. Like to just really trust and surrender and show yourself some grace throughout. And that will come along the way, like the listening to your body, like I said, with symptoms and things like that, that is a way of listening to your body. Like you're already on the right track with hearing what we talked about, with now having that perspective of my symptoms are trying to tell me something. That's already a step further in you having that mind-body connection, because you're taking your mind, listening to your body, and then hopefully acting on it and, you know, doing something about it. So yeah, and I think honestly, like the biggest piece of advice would be like really take what you learned today and then create some like actionable steps for yourself to actually start to move forward with both sides of the coin, like both the understanding of your body. Like I would definitely, you know, do your research and maybe check out my page. I have lots of good information on there. And also the more tangible piece of actually acting on that, like doing that little audit that we talked about earlier, seeing what areas you can optimize. And then in the process, just be gracious with yourself and keep moving forward. Take it step by step. Because like we talked about, we don't want like an overload of all of these different changes at once where you're like, you get 30 days in and you're like, holy crap, that was a lot. Like I need a break. We need sustainable, long-lasting change, like making very realistic steps and very, you know, actionable steps moving forward, so that as you start to make changes, if that's what you need to do, you kind of like put the last one on autopilot before you move on to the next thing. Like we need to optimize one area before we move on to the next. And even with how I work with women, like we take it module by module, like we spend time on nutrition and then we transition and spend time on stress and then we transition, but along the way, like we're making sure that you're all good in one area before moving forward. So definitely like take what you learn and start kind of seeing how you can start a piece of puzzle together for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. And what you're saying of like, it's all a process, and the process doesn't have to happen all at once, because that is the goal, is like this long lasting, sustainable change where you feel really good in what you're doing so that you can feel really good in your body. And back to what you said is like, yeah, trusting in the process of that, of the small shift by small shift by small shift, because yes, everybody says it, but there's a reason that everybody says it, that trusting in the process is how we get to that place. So thank you so much for all of this knowledge that you gave to us on the podcast today. And just like she said, if anybody needs more information on this, wants more information on this, really wants help with it, Grace is your girl for it. So Miss Grace, where can all of the listeners find you, and what do you have going on right now that they can be a part of?
Yeah, so the easiest place to go is to my Instagram. It's just at Grace Rash, R-A-S-H. Should have become a dermatologist so I could be Dr. Rash, but it's all good. I always say, people are like, your last name is Rash? And I'm like, yes, it is. R-A-S-H. I know that I'm in the wrong career field, but it's fine. A quick joke just for laughs. Obviously, so I'm married. That's my husband's last name. And he, way back when, wanted to go into the military. And one of the only things that held him back is like what the titles would be, like Private Rash. What? Rash, like all of them are bad. So anyways,
I love that.
Rash on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. If you are more like on the Facebook side of things, at Grace Rash LLC is where you can find me on there. What I have going on right now is I do have a couple of spots open. There's the sounds again. I have a couple of spots open in my signature 90-day program, which is the Hormone Balance Blueprint. This is the best way to fast track this healing process and really come to grips with understanding your body and the way that it works. So I do this one-on-one. It's for 90 days. And like I said, I have modules, I have material, and then of course, one-on-one calls every single week. And I have an evergreen enrollment set up right now. So basically once the spots are filled for the month, they're filled up. Enrollment is always open. And right now I do have a few spots. And then I also have a more recent endeavor that I've kind of started experimenting with, because I've had a lot of interest in the tracking side of things, like understanding your fertility window, especially for natural birth control or more successful pregnancy achievement. And so I started a master class that runs ever so often. It's called the Fertility Master Class, and it's a 3-week, 3-module master class where you really understand not just the way that your body and your cycle works, but more specifically around natural pregnancy prevention or more successful pregnancy achievement by understanding where your ovulation window lies, when you're fertile versus not fertile. Because I think a lot of people have this weird conception, especially growing up, that like you can pretty much get pregnant at any point if you're not careful enough. And that's not true at all. There's like a very small few day window where that's, able to happen. And so once you understand your body to that degree, it's a really simple process. So I have that running as like a little master class, but my program, the Hormone Balance Blueprint, is definitely the best way to really get your hands on the information and the implementation and the support with all things natural hormone balance.
Yay. Awesome. Yeah, ladies, anybody who is listening who this conversation just really resonated with, that the symptoms don't have to be normal, and getting your body into total alignment so that you can amplify your manifestations, make sure to go check out the show notes. I'm going to list all of this down below in the show notes, because this is such a huge piece of the manifestation process. And I'm so, so grateful for the work that you do to help women get to this place where they can feel that good inside of their bodies. So thank you again for coming on the show, Grace. It's been so awesome to chat with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I super appreciate it. It was such a good conversation, and I'm super hopeful that a lot of this information is going to hit home with your listeners, and they'll be able to start moving in that direction of a more optimized version of themselves.
Oh my gosh, thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm so grateful to have these no bullshit talks with you. If you enjoyed today's episode or the podcast as a whole, please spread the love by leaving me a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with others. This is how I will be able to spread more of these good vibes and be able to make more of an impact on the lives of others. And if you're not already part of all of the goodness and communities that I have to offer, check out the show notes. I have links to the different ways that I can support you on your manifestation journey and help you live a life full of more money, fulfillment, and freedom. But that is all for now. So big love and hugs, and I will chat with you soon, babe.